what's important to you. You say yes to what matters, and you say no to things that are a distraction. Understanding the self, understanding what makes you tick, allows you to surround yourself with people, places, and even things that are congruent with you achieving what you want to achieve and living the life you want to live. And then removing incongruencies. You know how sometimes you get a lot of phone calls of people asking you to do things, or a lot of invitations to a lot of different events? Knowing what to say yes to and knowing what to say no to is where there's power. So I want to tell you about Tiffany Tremmel. Tiffany Tremmel and I worked together for about 3 years. She was the head of labor relations for a manufacturing company in central Iowa. And this company was going through a massive issue with their culture. They hired a new general manager, and he was, let's say, disconnected from his heart and disconnected from the heart of his people. And Tiffany was in charge of labor. And so every time she would talk to this guy and say, hey, I think you're making a bad decision. Maybe you shouldn't cut overtime across the board before understanding the impact on people, he would just blow her off. And so by the time I met her, she was introverted, quiet. And I'm not saying just because of him, she was always that way. But she had made her mind up that he wasn't going to listen and it wasn't worth it. So she was actually seriously considering leaving that job. Well, after being in a 3-day retreat and then coaching with me for a good 7-8 months, Tiffany started to own her voice, like from the bottom of her toes out through her mouth, and say what was important to her. She created a vision for her life about unleashing her internal power, owning it, being in charge. And she actually recreated her whole job, that instead of being labor relations manager, she was going to be the strategic business partner that forwarded culture. And then we worked together for an additional 1.5 years on making that vision become a reality. But it all started with her first telling the truth to herself about what wasn't working in her career. She didn't have power. She wasn't making a difference. And the impact that she was having was nominal. And so then she created this future that she could live into. And then she actually started taking action for that future. She's since been promoted twice. So the leadership model that I used with Tiffany and that I use with everybody I coach is from a company called Coaches Training Institute. It begins with all leaders, and we call this 21st century leadership, the kind of leadership that's needed now, not the command and control that our bosses and our bosses' bosses led by, and maybe even some of your bosses right now. But creating, the leader's job is to create vision and direction. The leader's job is to look for partnership opportunities for the people in the organization so they can grow. The leader's job is to empower and enable folks, and then to use insight and intuition to forward innovation. This is leading from the front, this is leading from the side, this is leading from behind, and this is leading from the field. But none of these dimensions are available unless you're leading from within and that you're very connected to the leader within, not at the affect of all of the noise that's going on in the world or all of the chaos and drama and entrenchment that's going on in the office, but a stake in the ground. Here's who I am as a leader. And then doing the development work to know what that looks like. What are your values? What's your vision? How are you going to operate? What is your signature brand as a leader? And then from there, then you create vision and direction for others. Then you create partnership. Then you know when to lead from behind. And then you can access these higher levels. So the work of Keen Alignment, my organization, is we work with companies. Our mission is working with organizations to create healthy, intentional, high performance organizational culture. It all begins with the leader within. We work with the CEO, we work with the executive team, and they till the soil inside. That's why we say we do transformation from the inside out. I can't bring them things to give to their people if they're not operating congruently with their own vision. And certainly if they don't have a vision, we can't do the work we do. So let's talk about what the leader within is. Why you're here today is for purpose, passion, and power. What's your leadership stake? What's your why? I was talking to Lee today. I've been coaching Lee for probably about 3 years, and the entire leadership team at her organization, she created herself as her leadership stake is, and now I want to paraphrase it because I wrote it down upstairs, but leading with courage and integrity and bringing out the best in others with compassion and inspiration. That's her stake. My leadership stake is people are liberated. It's why I do the work I do. People are liberated, meaning they're inventing their life, not surviving their life and at the effect of what everybody else wants for their life. So the first most important thing about the leader within is creating your stake, your stand, your vision, and then developing your self-awareness. What's my impact that I'm having on others? How are my responses, my reactions, my interactions working or not working for me? To have self-awareness, it actually takes a deep level of courage and emotional maturity. And then understanding the difference between your right hemisphere and your left hemisphere. This is our prefrontal cortex, our executive brain. This is where all critical thinking is done. If we're not getting enough rest, if we're not eating right, if we're not taking care of our health, moving our body, getting enough water, enough good food, enough fun in our life, our prefrontal cortex, our executive brain, suffers and is sluggish. But we all have a right and a left hemisphere. Our right hemisphere is the part of our brain that is creative and innovative and comes up with solutions, and it has access, gives us access to empathy. Our left hemisphere is structure, the to-do list, the sequencing, the intellect, the order of things. That's left hemisphere. Power for the leader within is integrating the right and the left hemisphere together so we can lead from our whole brain, our whole executive brain. And then there's systems thinking. It's the ability to look at the whole and the pieces within the whole and the people. We do these leadership assessments. And if you come to our leadership retreat, Ignite Power, you will not only take a leadership assessment, you'll work with a personal coach and get debriefed on that. But we look at how's the system's judgment of this person? Can they see the power of the people? What's their capacity for empathy and for perspective and gaining others' perspectives and contributing to people? What's their capacity to understand the work that has to get done? All of those puzzle pieces inside the whole, and for having them work congruently together. And what's their capacity to see the whole picture of the puzzle before the puzzle's even put together. I move around a lot, so that's why I go in and out of fuzziness, and Vivian's fixing that, as you can see as we go. What's the health, fitness of the leader? Is the leader clear? Is the leader grounded? Is the leader healthy? Are they tending to their emotional self? Are they tending to their physical self? Are they tending to their spiritual self and their intellectual self? And then what are the disciplines or the habits that the leader within is developing? Are they creating a plan every day or setting an intention every day? Do they do their daily disciplines so they can be operating congruently with their vision, making the right choices, saying yes to the right things and no to the right things? And how's their personal accountability? Do they hold themselves to a standard that says, yes, I'm going to exercise 5 days a week? And then do they wake up and exercise? Or do they wake up and meditate? Or do they do those things that are healthy? So the leader within is the strongest person in the room for themselves. Okay, so that's the leader within. Is it a lot of work? Yes. When I coach An executive, we spend 6 months just on the leader within before we ever talk about how are you being inspiring for others, or how do you give performance reviews, or how do you encourage people, or how do you build a high performance team. None of that's important if this leader within is not intact, grounded, and clear about where they're going. So there's 4 quotients that impact the leader within. The first quotient is the intellect. What's happening with my prefrontal cortex? Do I have the intellectual chops to learn? Am I reading regularly? Am I keeping my prefrontal cortex fresh? Am I working with myself so that I'm quick, I'm catching on, I can change behaviors that don't work? Is my intellect intact? Second is character. Do I know what my values are, and do I operate congruently with my values? Do I tell the truth to myself and others? What's my relationship with my character? Have I done the excavating of my life to even determine what my values are? And then am I living congruently with those values? Next is emotional. This is the big piece, because you could be smart, but you could be unhealthy emotionally and numbing out all the time because you cannot deal with the reality of your emotions. The emotional connection is why, Daniel Goldman with IQ, or emotional intelligence, was one of the best-selling books. The emotions are your ability to recover from adversity, stress, pressure, downfalls, disappointments, anger, whatever, and get back on track quickly. And actually, the power of emotional intelligence is the time it takes you to get back to recovery. Back when I was in my 30s, maybe, if I was angry or let down, or I wasn't doing well in my job for a week or two, it might take me a week to even realize that I was upset. Seriously, most human beings, 85% of the world's population, doesn't really even know what emotional intelligence is or what consciousness is. So something's off, but they don't know what it is. As I developed myself, the time period to recovering back to my highest and best self became shorter and shorter and shorter. And now I can process that in minutes. The longest would be like an hour. And I know, okay, something's off. I was on vacation with my son. He said, "Are you upset with me?" And at first I was going to say, "No, I'm not upset." And I said, "Oh yeah, I do notice I am a little upset about this thing." And it's always good to have people around you who can challenge you and challenge how you're being. And that's why, I surround myself with people who are courageous enough to do that. And the fourth piece of the leader within is really your ability to create a network of relationships. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Are you surrounding yourself with positive, ambitious, whole people who nurture their whole self, not just their work self? And what's your ability to create relationships, maintain relationships, and keep relationships, and clean up relationships when there's messes? So those 4 aspects are critical. So how does it all begin? It begins with you and me and everybody creating a purpose for their leadership, if not a purpose for their life. So I said, my leadership stake is people are liberated. That really is my life calling. When I was 36 years old, I was in that retreat and the questioning about what's your life about. And I saw that for me, I was a recruiter back then. And while I was doing very, very well as a recruiter, like in the top 10% of the nation, what was missing from my role was after they get the job. And I knew then that the role of recruiting was incongruent because I wanted to have an impact on culture. I wanted to work with CEOs on creating the kind of work environment that even they would be excited about. So that's when People Are Liberated was created. And I have made a series of choices in my life that have been congruent with that purpose. And so will you too. So how do you create a purpose for your life? Well, I just told you, mine at work is forever liberating the human spirit. That's now become my new company, Keen Alignments Vision, and it's aligned with mine. That's the power of owning your own business. You can create a business that is a self-expression of your calling. But let's talk about you now. What do you want? Well, ask yourself, what do I want? And why is that important to me? And then ask yourself again, why do I want that? And why is that important to me? And then ask again and again and again and again and again. We say 9 times. The 9 whys is a liberating structure that was created by chief innovators at one of the major universities. And when you ask that question, why is that important to me, or what's important to me, every time you ask, you go deeper in the inquiry, and it's kind of like a personal inquiry, and you get to the root. So 9 whys. Why is that important to me? So what do I want for my life? I want to liberate the human spirit at work, because, that's what I'm all about, business. Why is that important? Well, it's important because if people are happy at work, they're going to be happier when they go home. Well, why is that important to me? Because most people want to make a contribution. And if they feel like they're making that contribution, they'll have more fulfillment. Well, why is that important to me? Well, because when people are fulfilled, they're fully alive. Well, why is that important? Because when people are fulfilled and fully alive, they have more of their brain available to them, more of their mind power to make a difference. And then you keep going and keep going and keep going. You can Google the 9 whys for liberating structures. Let's talk about how to create a vision for your life. Well, it begins with catalyzing. Once you do the 9 whys, and you do either journaling or working with a friend, put it into words that inspire you. I am, or people liberated, or forever liberating the human spirit. But imagine you living that vision, and then write it down. Make the statement concise so you can memorize it. So when someone says, what's your vision for your leadership? You have it. Use action verbs describing how that vision becomes a reality. What are you going to do and how to make that declaration be a reality? And then what's the contribution? What's the impact and the results that that vision will provide? So for me, forever liberating the human spirit at work, what's the results? A number of people volunteering to have culture be important to them in the organization. Cultural improvements in the organization, the happiness quotient in the organization, saved marriages, better relationships, people getting fit, people taking their health. I just had a client today that said, Maji, you'll be so proud of me. She hates exercise. We actually did a whole workshop for her company, Deep Alignment, and she didn't participate in the ropes course. And she said, you'll be so proud of me. I did on my Nintendo Wii dancing last night with my son. We both got a ton of exercise. We loved it. We bonded together as mother and son. And I woke up this morning with more energy than I've had in years. To me, that's a measure and a result of where we're at with me, where I'm at with my vision. So let's go to understanding what's important to you and understanding what's important to all humans. All human beings have 4 fundamental needs, meaning this needs to get filled for happiness to be available. They need a certain amount of certainty. This is why when you lose your job, or you don't have a job, or you don't have a feeling that you're contributing, why people get so crazy, because they need to know what they're doing. So to the degree that you can, create certainty in your life. By the way, daily rituals, daily habits that are healthy are a great way to create certainty. About 19 years ago, I went through a divorce, and my coach said, you need to have a daily ritual, something you do every single day to ground you, because your identity is wrapped up in this marriage. And if you don't have something to ground you, you're going to look for things from the outside. It was the best coaching I'd ever gotten. Human beings also need a certain amount of novelty. Novelty is fun, change. Novelty can be as simple as going to a restaurant and ordering some food you've never ordered, or going to a restaurant that you've never been to before, like an ethnic restaurant, and doing something new, going on vacation, a different kind of vacation, exploring, learning how to deep sea fish or fish, fly fish. That's all novelty. It allows the brain to experience something brand new, and it builds new pathways in your brain and makes it easier for you to develop new habits. All human beings need connection. They need to be connected to other people. So if you're working in the 2D world of remote all the time, you've got to find a way to connect with other people. This is why social circles are so important in this hybrid world. And all people need to know that they matter, that they make a difference, that they are doing something significant. This is why also when a person either retires from their job or the children leave home or they get a divorce, they feel like, I'm not doing anything, I'm of no value. So whether you're here for yourself or your leadership, you need these 4 things too. Now let's look at the 2 spiritual needs. The 2 spiritual needs are growth and contribution. Growth means I'm sharpening my saw, as Stephen Covey would say. I'm developing myself. In these books, Outliers, I forgot the guy who wrote it, but if somebody can tell me, I'll tell you in a minute. People need 10,000 hours of study before they can master something. So Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers, talks about 10,000 hours, but people need to continue stretching themselves, moving themselves to the next level, because growth is a spiritual need. When we're growing, we experience fulfillment and giving back, contributing. It's different than significance. Contribution is I make the world a better place. I help people be better, and those people, their families are impacted, like Kelly with her son. That is contribution, way different than significance. So basic human needs, spiritual needs, make sure those are being met. Once you create your vision for your future, now you got to make sure you're living into it. And the 4 basic needs and the 2 spiritual needs will help you not only develop your vision for your leadership in your life, but they'll also help you know what to say yes to and what to say no to. So your values, once you create your vision and you're clear and you know what's important to you, create values. My top values in life are integrity, meaning I do what I say I'm going to do, and if I don't, I communicate, and integrity with myself, making sure I'm living up to my own standards. And another value is family. I will go out of my way to see my family. I'm driving 8 hours out of my way to spend time with my sister and 3 hours out of my way on a road trip across the country to see my son before he has his first baby. Because family is a value to me. Now, when I was younger, my highest value was economic. I got to make money. I got to support this family. Economic is still important, but now it's abundance. I want abundance because if I value abundance, I'll be able to have autonomy. Autonomy is another one of my values. And if I have autonomy and abundance, I can take my family on vacation. I can fly across the country to see my grandchild. I have freedom to go and do what I want to do. So what are your values and how do you create them? One of the best ways to create your values is make a list of the 100 accomplishments you've had in your life, and make a list of the 100 things you'd like to do before you die. And then look for common themes in that list of 100. And those common themes will illuminate for you what your values are. Now we're going to talk about derailers. Your saboteur is, you remember that the old cartoons where they had the angel on the shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, and it took like Jiminy Cricket, your conscience. Saboteur is those strengths that you have that have always helped you be successful. However, when you overuse those strengths of being super nice or super funny or super driven or super fast or super anxious or hypervigilant, the saboteur gets in your way and derails your success because it's on overdrive. And it has you only focus and only show up with that magic sauce that you have, that secret sauce, and now you're overusing it and you're not leading or living from a balanced perspective. So let's talk about some common saboteurs. We all have, every human, if you're human, by the time you were 4 years old, your little personality was developed. Whether it was charming, maybe you're very charming and you overcharm and you say things that maybe aren't true, or you make promises that you don't keep, or you're very hyper vigilant and you're always looking for what's wrong and what mistakes people are making. But some common saboteurs are the controller or the stickler. The controller has to control everything. Everything's really organized in their life, but other people don't get to show up as a leader. The stickler is always looking for what you're doing wrong, or that, that's 0.0008. I was at a company giving them their results of their ideal versus actual culture. And somebody I coach who is a stickler stopped the whole meeting and needed to know why it was 0.0006 and not 0.007. And I literally looked at him and said, seriously, we're going to go here right now? He goes, yes, we are, because numbers matter. But you see, what that sticklerness did is it derailed the whole meeting. And they didn't get what they were supposed to get out of that meeting. And so sometimes the stickler gets in our way. How about the victim? Some people have the saboteur of being a victim, or a pattern of being a victim, where everything's being done to me, those bad people, or they're restless, they're hyperachievers. So their schedule is always really busy, or they're chain smokers because they're restless. Hyperachiever, hyper rational, hyper vigilant. There's no freedom when this sucker or suckers are released on other people. There's no freedom to be. There's no way you can live into that future as a possibility when the saboteur is running the show. Or maybe your saboteur is an avoider. You don't say what you need to say. You let things build up and pile up, and then you explode. Or maybe you're a people pleaser or a martyr, and you're always making sure everybody's happy, but you're not happy. You don't get enough exercise. You don't get enough rest because you're always serving others. So the saboteur is a result of these patterns that you learned starting at 4 years old. 4 years old, your identity is created. Now we get deep into this in our Ignite Power workshop in September. It's a deep dive into creating your future, like this total authored future that you get to author. What's your life going to be like? How are you going to live? How's it going to show up? You get to, in great detail, we go through lots of exercises for you to create that. And then the next day, we get into what's in your way. And how is what's in your way killing you, killing your self-expression, not having you achieve what you want to achieve? What are you tolerating, putting up with from yourself and others because you're entrenched in these patterns of any of these and a lot more? That's the other thing we do before you come to the retreat. You take a leadership assessment, you get debriefed by a coach, and then you take the saboteur assessment. And you get to really look at how these saboteurs are in your way and derailing you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish. Next, we're going to talk about the 7 levels of individual, group, and organizational effectiveness. For today, we're talking about you, and why it's important to understand these 7 levels is because once you are aware, remember we talked at the very beginning about self-awareness. If you know where you are on this ladder, you also know where you are that you need to shift. So the lowest level is hopelessness. This is when you have given up that there is any hope for a positive future. So when I moved to California, I came here, I was a recruiter, I sold my company, I sold everything I had, and I moved here in like an 8x6 trailer, small trailer, and put everything else I had in storage. I started a software company. We were moving forward. I invested about $1 million in that software company. Then the day before, a lot of bad things happened, but the day before we were supposed to launch, the partner, my so-called partner, gave me an agreement that said I no longer owned 50% of that company, that I would only own 10% of that company. And I was freaked out. I went home, I laid in bed, I put the covers over my head, and I just laid there not knowing what to do. I was in complete despair. My son at the time, 22 years old, walked in the room and said, "Mom, what are you doing? It's like noon and you're sleeping." And I said, "I don't know what to do. I've lost $1 million. I've made bad choices. I made a mistake." I was victim, whining, moaning. And he said, "The woman who raised me would never lay in bed and not know what to do. The woman who raised me would take action and do something about it." That day, I called Kaiser. I went and talked to a therapist. I'm like, "I need Prozac or something. I got to figure this out." He goes, "Honey, you don't need Prozac. You need to file a lawsuit." That night, I filed a lawsuit. I took action. Thank God that my son interrupted that hopelessness. Now, fear is where anxiety and craving and is constantly in the way. So I am very nervous that something bad is going to happen. It's resistance of what is, and almost certainty that something bad will happen. Like, when is the next shoe going to drop? So in hopelessness, a person can only access happiness less than 5% of the time. In fear, a person can only access happiness less than 10% of the time. Fear is, sometimes it's important. It tells us that a saber-toothed tiger is going to come and attack us, or that someone is going to hurt us. But when we live in that constant vigilant state of mind that something bad is going to happen, we suppress possibility. The next level up is frustration. Frustration, a person can only experience happiness 25% of the time, which means unhappiness, anger, pent up agitation, 75% of the time. So these are ineffective moods or energies or levels. We need them. They inform us of what's going on in our body, because we'll talk a lot more about this in the Ignite Power Retreat. But when we are below the power and freedom line, something bad is happening in our body. We are being attacked by adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, and it is attacking our heart, our brain, and our internal organs. So while it's important to feel your feels and tell the truth about your emotions and speak them and then do something about them, we don't want to be stuck there, because what happens is moods, when left unattended, become our personality, and our personality then becomes the way we see life. We all have experienced that little old man who's crotchety and angry, like Archie Bunker or any of these other TV shows. They weren't always that way. It happened because moods left untamed or unattended. So let's talk about the levels above the line. Courage. People can experience happiness 65% of the job. Courage is an innate belief that something positive will happen, despite evidence that it will. But there is a belief, there's a willing to take risks, there's a willing to step into something new because there's a belief. Courage is one of the most powerful and vulnerable places a person can live. And I would say I have mastered the art of living in courage. I moved to another state. I'm driving with my dog across the country. I do crazy things. I just did 220 miles in Glacier National Park and rode my bike 5,000 feet up East Glacier over the Continental Divide in the rain, 5,000 feet down. Courage, a belief in a future as a possibility. Engagement, people can experience happiness 75% of the time in engagement. This is the experience of being all in the game, fully utilizing my assets and seeing everybody else's assets, and very little attention on what's not working. Very little attention in the complaint department, the gossip department, the collusion department. Very little attention because there's no space, because we're exuding new hormones, new chemicals. Oxytocin begins in courage, dopamine, serotonin. When this happens above the line, our aperture opens. We can see possibilities from all angles, which leads us to innovation. In innovation, people are happy almost 80% of the time because they're tapping into their highest levels of intelligence. They're exploring new possibilities, creating things that have never been created before. We can't do that when we're in a state of anger and when we're contracted and when we've got all these hormones like holding us hostage. But up above the line and the highest level is synchronicity. And if you can get to synchronicity even a few times a day, this is the experience of bliss, the experience of all is well with the world, of bringing people together. We had that experience at our annual leadership retreat and strategic planning. And I gave everybody an opportunity I said, your next assignment is making dinner. And I gave them the ingredients and they worked together. And when I got back from that 1 hour break, there was joy. The faces were proud. They were connected. They had become one. That's being in sync. So these 7 levels offer you a barometer to check in with your moods. If you're in a mood too long, get support in hopelessness. Call a friend, tell somebody this is what's going on with me. In fear, make a list of everything you're happy about. In frustration, make a list of everything you're pissed off about, and then share it with somebody else. Maybe not the person you're frustrated with at first, but then do some work like Byron Katie. What am I upset by? And what does this mean to me? We teach you how to do all this in our retreat in September in Sonoma, which I'll give you the dates in a minute. Of course, when you're above the line, go party, bring people into it, share the goodness with others, because energy is contagious and energy is more powerful than matter. And if you're a Debbie Downer, you're bringing everybody around you down, including your kids, including people that work for you. And if you are celebrating life's journey and exploring and doing fun, new things, you'll just be happier. You'll have more vitality, more freedom. All right, so your values. Earlier, we talked about creating your values. We also talked about right hemisphere, left hemisphere. Right hemisphere, as a reminder, is where empathy comes from, innovation comes from, seeing the whole. Left hemisphere is structure, systems, architecture, plans, timelines. When you're creating your values, you want to make sure you've got both sides, so you're tapping into your whole brain in your values list. So autonomy and freedom are right hemisphere. Integrity is left hemisphere. It's a structure that I hold for myself. My fitness regimen. So health is one of my values. That's left hemisphere. Now it serves right hemisphere, but the whole thing about value synthesis is you want to synthesize your values so you've got right and left hemisphere both being tapped. So let's talk about neuroscience. The 7 levels chart that I gave you is a neuroscience model. Neuroscience is what tells us that old dogs can learn new tricks. When I was in young career recruiter, they would say, only hire people that are exactly what you want, because you can't change people's behavior. You can't change their moods. You can't change their personality. But I can change my behavior. I can change my moods, and I can change my personality if I want to, because the power of science is now investigating and researching and learning that, wow, even at 90 years old, you can change your behavior, but you have to want to. So when we do the work to retrain our brain, we can create anything we want for our life. We can create new pathways. We can develop new habits. We can live the life we want, because as human beings, we have the power of conscious choice. Yes, life has dealt us certain things. I certainly did not grow up in the model family, but I can say that I have utilized the power of transformation and the power of neuroscience my whole adult life to continue to recreate, to continue to give myself new neural pathways. I would say I've done well over the 10,000 hours in changing my neural pathways of my thoughts, my beliefs, my behaviors. So how do you do that? How do you retrain your brain? Well, there's 5 keys to neuroplasticity. One is eating healthy, giving yourself the nutrients you need, eating from the sun. You can see these pictures. We've got plants, and I don't eat plant-based only. I do eat meat, but eating healthy, giving yourself that access to healthy foods, knowing what your body needs, listening to your body. There's a great book called The Emotion Code, and it talks about how the body holds on, the body contracts and has constrictions when we're below the line, below that power and freedom line. So if we can listen to our body and know what our body needs, we change the body, we change the mind. Very powerful. Another key to neuroplasticity is exercise. We need to be moving our body every day. We were not designed to sit. Think about cavemen, cavewomen. Everybody was walking, everybody was exercising, but not like going to the gym. They were going to get their food. They were cooking, they were moving their body every single day. Another key to neuroplasticity is getting enough sleep, making sure that we are doing things that are like sleep, that are recovering. When we get all that information, all that emotion, all of that bits of information coming in, the only way we get rid of the junk The only way we get rid of what we don't need is sleep and rest. And then there's doing things we've never done before, socializing with people we've never socialized before, meeting new people, going to new places, traveling. It's called novelty. It is a key to neuroplasticity. And then finally, the fifth is mindfulness, training our brain to focus. This doesn't mean meditating, although meditating is a really great way to retrain the brain. But, you know, people say to me, Maji, I can't meditate. I've never been able to meditate. My brain has so many thoughts. All the more reason to train it. Because you see, we are so addicted to the adrenaline bias in our world. On the phone, every 9 seconds, people pick up their phone and they got to be texting or doing this or doing that. And our brain is like scattered. It's called cognitive scattering, and it's one of the major inhibitors to fulfillment and happiness. Well, how you monitor and reverse cognitive scattering is through mindfulness. So it can be while you're washing dishes. You're not going to listen to music. You're not going to talk to anybody. You're just going to be mindful about washing those dishes, or walking in the forest, or journaling. It's a way to be mindful. So 5 keys, one more time: eating healthy and knowing what your body needs and giving it what it needs. A lot of people do blood work and blood tests to find out, what does my body need? This new ring that I got called the Aura Ring, I'm waiting for it to come. It's going to tell me how my sleep is. It's going to tell me what my deficiencies are and what I need to do to build up that, because people now know there's a connection between the brain and the thoughts. The brain is the organ, the mind is the vehicle. There's a connection between the power of our mind and what's going on with our body. Exercise, sleep, mindfulness, and novelty. So those are the 5 keys to neuroplasticity. So I want to tell you also about Chris Prendergast. Chris is the redheaded guy. I coached Chris for also 3 years. He works at the same company that Tiffany did. And in our ropes course, which you see him there at, he created, his job was quality control engineer. Chris was a stickler, a controller, and hypervigilant, always telling people what was wrong with what they were doing, because he's a quality engineer. So Chris would walk into a room and everybody would like turn their back or leave. They would flee because they knew that Chris was going to tell them what they were doing wrong. And Chris was growing up in his career, but he had no ability to inspire people. He didn't even know that he wasn't inspiring. Why aren't I inspiring? So Chris created in our Ignite Power retreat, the power of, what did he create exactly? I am an inspiring man of integrity. And then back then, our first retreat, they did high ropes. Now we don't do it till our second retreat. But he went up to the high rope. He declared that he was no longer going to be a stickler, controlling, and he said an a-hole. And he created, I am an inspiring man of integrity. And then he jumped into the leap of faith. He not only has become that inspiring man of integrity, he's been promoted 4 times, and now he runs that organization. And he is an inspiring man of integrity. He's the most revered leader in that organization. He's quadrupled his earnings, and he's happy, fulfilled. He says he's a better father. So this is his testimonial. You can read it for yourself. But it's all about inventing a positive future for yourself and then working through those levels on an ongoing basis to get there. So I want to invite you, if you like what you're hearing today, to join us for our Ignite Power Leadership Retreat. It's in Sonoma, California. It's the weekend of September 22nd. All meals, all lodging is provided. This is where I got my leadership training at Westerbeck Ranch. It's 2.5 days of action-packed. You will walk out of there being advanced in your life, achieving what you want to achieve, knowing how to do it. So day 1, you invent your future. Day 2, you look at all of the things, the habits, the beliefs, the saboteurs, the ways of being, the behaviors that are in your way of living in to that future as a possibility. And then day 3, you create a roadmap. You look at your goal line and your soul line, and what do I need to do? What habits do I need to develop to be operating at the highest levels of effectiveness, like at the least encourage engagement, innovation, and synchronicity. And if you want to lead and have people respect you and follow you, and people be inspired by you, you have to be inspired. You have to be inspired about who you are. You have to be able to communicate what you need. You have to be able to bring people with you. You create the future and you bring them with you in that envisioning and outcome. So join us for Ignite Power. Because you're on this webinar, we have a discount code. I think we're giving $200 off. And if you happen to be in human resources, you get 23 credits for the SHRM organization towards your recertification. So even if you're not in HR, to get classes approved by an organization this big has to be a damn good class. So it's valid. We also have a ton of testimonials on our website. Join us for Ignite Power and catapult yourself to the next level. So let's move into commitment. Whether it's Ignite Power or you're going to do another kind of transformational retreat, make a decision to commit to your life and your leadership, your fulfillment, and your happiness. Someone in my life recently lost their job, and I said, listen, you're either going to be the windshield or the bug. You're the bat or the ball. You want to be in charge. Many of us have to be employees, right? We don't want to go on our own, but pick an employer that is aligned with the same things that you're aligned with. Pick an employer that is going to give you the experience that you want to have. Don't have one life at home and another life at work. We also have a Work Liberated podcast that's going to be launching in October. At the same time, my book, Ignite Culture, is launching. And it really is supportive of people who want to live an aligned, designed life. So first, you got to look at who you are and what you want. Then you look at how do you alter the culture of where you're at. And if you can't alter the culture of where you work, then how do you pick the right culture for you? Because you actually have a magnificent gift as a human being, and it's the power of choice. And if you know that you have choice available to you moment by moment by moment, you don't have to be your reactions. You don't have to be your fears. You don't have to be your upsets. You don't have to be your disappointments. You don't have to be your regrets. You can have anything you want for yourself and your life by choices you make and commitments you make. So make a commitment. Declaration. This goes back to creating your vision as a leader. Making a declaration is something that you just do. When I said, I'm going to move to Northern California and do work that catalyzes culture and work with executives so they can create the kind of life they want and have businesses that are inspiring to them. Because the truth is, most CEOs go to their executive forums, Vistage or whatever, and they go and complain about how unhappy they are because they signed up to own their own business because they love the work they do. They don't necessarily love dealing with the entrenchment of people's inability to get along and behave and play well in the sandbox. So there's a lot of despair and frustration and anxiety and fear in leadership today. So a declaration like I made when I owned a recruiting company and lived in Chicago, Illinois, I said, I will be in Northern California. I created that future. I had no evidence, but it was inspiring to me. It was a stretch to me. And then I did a series of things like take coaching school and leadership training and participate in over 30 transformational programs, beginning with the first one I did. That's why I have 10,000 hours and my business is that now, because I made a declaration. I drew the line in the sand, or the line in the cement, as I like to say, created an inspiring vision for myself that you will do for you, and then put myself into the position of being able, having the education, having the training to live the life I wanted. But it began with a declaration that I made with no evidence, no agreement, and no authority or approval from anybody outside. It's my life, my choice. And extraordinary human beings grant themselves permission to create their experience of life, to be the master of their own experience, of their own domain. And you can have that freedom too. It begins with a choice to live that way and begin living that way. Once you create that future for yourself, then you enroll others. When I first did the Landmark Forum, I came home. I told my husband at the time, this is the possibility I want for my life. I told all my friends, and some people were like, what is wrong with you? You know, I don't care what you want for your life. But slowly and surely, as my behavior changed, people started listening, and more of my family started participating in transformational work. And then my business changed. I created with my employees what would be possible if we weren't only recruiting, but we were helping people find people that were aligned with values. That's how we created the software, that the thing that eventually became the software. So enrollment is sharing who you are as a leader with anybody who will listen, and having people listen to you for the possibility that you are, bringing people to courage with you. That's so important when you're creating a place to stand in your life, creating a vision, is sharing that vision with everybody, and then sharing, here's what it's going to take for me to make this a reality. And I need your help. I need your support. We need to grow together. So whether it's your family, your spouse, your boss, once you create that vision for your life, you got to share it and share it and share it and share it. And then people will be listening for you that way, and they'll have expectations of what's going to change in your life. And so integrity is not only declaring the vision, but taking actions. So if you say, I'm creating a vision of being a healthy 50-year-old, well, people are going to expect you to start working out. People are going to expect you to change your eating habits. And you want that. You want, the reason Weight Watchers works, the reason group projects like group awareness and group training, which is why we do Ignite Power for people, is because when you do this kind of work in teams, not only you're pulling for yourself to be your best self, so is everybody else. When you enroll the possibilities that are around you, the people around you in your possibilities, you're not in it alone. You have a mastermind of your friends and family. So my intention today was to give you access to purpose, passion, and power by A, creating a vision for your life, B, understanding what your motivators are, your values, what makes you tick, and then having enough self-awareness to remove things or stop making choices that are incongruent with that vision for your life. So if you want to reach out to us, here's how to connect with me. Again, my name is Maji or Margaret Graziano. If you're interested in our Ignite Power retreat, I'll put that back on the screen so you can see it and take advantage of that $200. We will be doing a series of mini workshops. I have a YouTube channel. We have the Work Liberated podcast. Get to know us. We give a lot of content away for free, and we are committed to liberate the human spirit at work, forever liberate the human spirit at work, whether you come to our retreats or not. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thanks for taking your time to work on